anti-aging category, we have these serums, which is relatively a newer category. A couple of years ago, it was not there, but now, consumers have started spending a lot on the serums, and they understand the benefits. And in the hair care, we definitely have the anti-hair fall, because, India has a lot of bald people. And even in the women, we see that this concept of hair fall has, started increasing a lot. And of course, anything which has to deal with the hair growth is a good category. Now, about the market trends, of course, Vinod has, touched upon this, but I'd like to reiterate. This is based on the KPMG report, that came in about, 2019. So India is growing at the CAGR of 18%, which is actually pretty high compared to the other categories. And we are looking at this to even, further grow to about 25% annual growth rate, touching, $20 billion by 2025. And that's for the beauty and wellness sector. Currently, I think it is about, 7.5 to $8 billion, because the numbers which are put on the screen, 6.5, that was from 2018. And market growth is, driven by the high-end cosmetics, the skincare products, color cosmetics, which is a very big portion of the Indian consumers, primarily due to the fact, that whenever there is a marriage that happens, or for the bridal to have, the makeup and the glow and everything, they use a very large number of color cosmetics. So that's a very interesting category to be in. And of course, fragrances is very high. Indians love fragrance. And then the makeup cosmetics. The interesting thing in the market is the new buzzwords, like back to nature and, total well-being, or, using the natural products, kind of like that. They have started taking a lot of limelight in the media, and also the consumers like to speak about it. When I started about 5 years ago, these were not the things, that were being talked about. There were just handful of players who were selling organic products, just a few of the brands, which were doing organic and natural products. As you mentioned earlier, India is very big on Ayurveda products. And I just want to touch upon that, quickly. So what happens is, that the Ayurveda being the ancient science for, health and beauty in India. So the consumers had been using Ayurvedic products, and it's very useful. It has been helpful to a lot of people, but Ayurvedic products have essentially been kind of cheaper products, and they had been used from the flora and fauna which was present in the country at that time. And I want to say that natural and organic products is now an extension of Ayurveda products, because people have understood that Ayurveda products were coming from nature, but there was not much science or high technology infusion in those products. So now when we look at the natural products which are coming from the nature, having some high scientific formulations to them, and becoming more efficacious, is something that would be very interesting for the entire market in India. So just a quick slide. We are at about 7.5 $8 billion, and we're looking at $20 billion. Now, organic products market in India is something which has just started getting attention from everybody. There was a recent report by ASSOCHAM and Ernst & Young, in which they are referring that the market size is gonna be 10,000 to 12,000 crore by 2020. And this was done about 2 years ago. So maybe 2020 is not a good year, but I think in another 1 or 2 years, we will see the market to grow up to about $1.5 billion, 1.5 to $2 billion. It is, even the organic products market is growing at a CAGR of 25%. And I would not be surprised, that if in coming months, we see that growing at about 30%. So the current market size, based on the actual estimation of the consumer, is about 4,000 crores. And some of the key trends in the marketplace for organic products are the expansion of the distribution channels. So I'll just quickly, show you the next slide. We now have the online horizontal marketplaces like, Flipkart, Amazon, Snapdeal, and Paytm. Those are, kind of popular marketplaces. And then we, of course, have the Amazon India, which is in itself a complete, a beautiful website, and selling whole variety of products. Then we have the online beauty shops like, Purple, Nykaa, and also, we have Vanity Wagon, and people like that who are doing only beauty vertical marketplaces. Then we have the organic and natural e-shops, which are gaining attention, and ours is one of those. And lastly, we have the fashion and lifestyle online stores like Myntra, Jibong, and several others like Shoppers Stop, who have their online website. And so the whole distribution channels have expanded, which was not earlier there part of the Indian organic and natural space. um, Online sales of FMCG. Now, this is a very interesting data set. This was a report done by Nielsen. And so, as you can understand, that India is largely an unorganized retail market. So 90% of the business happens in the unorganized way. When I say unorganized, I mean mom and pop stores, or the neighborhood stores, or the non-branded stores. And so e-commerce contributes to just 2% of the overall sales of FMCG in India. And that's a very small number. This number for the European countries and also for some of the American nations, it could be as high as 20% or 25%. But for India, it's very small. So we have a large gap to cover, when we are talking about the online sales of the FMCG products. As per the report, it's going to be 5% or $4 billion by 2022, which is a breather here. And the report also suggests, that the traditional trade or the traditional retail is going to shrink to 85% from the current 89%. Now, some of you may be thinking, what about the remaining percentage? And that goes to the modern trade or the organized retail, which is currently about 9% of the whole market, and it's gonna go up to 10%. So there will be an addition of 1% over the next 2 to 3 years. Now, in the FMCG space, in fact, food is the biggest contributor, but personal care is also pretty close at 40%. So the overall consumers who are buying the products online in the FMCG, we are looking at personal care as 40% the driver over there. And if we look at the overall, the whole e-commerce sales that happen in the India, we are looking at FMCG is about 11% of the entire sales, which is not a very exciting number, because even in India, the e-commerce is still a very fancy thing for consumers or for the millennials. Uh, Being that electronics and fashion is something which gets more contribution in terms of on the FMCG sales, sorry, in terms of the sales in the e-commerce. But FMCG and beauty and personal care, I think it's gonna go and gonna take up to 20 or 25% contribution. High flyers in the category being male grooming, beauty and personal care, and infant care. In fact, I want to touch upon that infant care is something which is underserved in the country right now. Key trends are smartphone penetration and increased data consumption, and of course the effort by large companies to make the products available online. So just to quickly show you the distribution channels in the offline space is luxury wellness and spa chains. We have the high-end salon chains which are organized, which are multi-city and branded chains. Then specialist hypermart like Shoppers Stop, lifestyle stores which have certain portion into the beauty space. And then organic and natural stores. This is something new which has started developing even at a smaller city level. I live in tier 2 towns, so we have about 3-4 different organic and natural stores, which was not there a year ago. And then we're talking about the supermarkets, and then I have touched upon dermatologists, who are also one of the key business driver for these organic and natural products nowadays. And then skincare professionals. Consumer trends in India are very unique. It being, that as per the report by the Indian Beauty and Hygiene Association, the per capita spend is about just 450 rupees, which is even less than $10. But I do not want you to feel bogged down about the number, because this is talking about the whole India as a nation, and for a fact that 85% of our population is in the villages. So they may not be the highest spender in terms of the beauty. So we are talking about the urban population for the most part. But there is a rise in the income of the middle class, and that is something which Vinod was also touching upon. We have the growing population of the middle class, and their available spends for beauty is also going up. So they are the ones who are our audience. Very important to understand for all these Estonian companies, India is extremely price sensitive market, and I mean it every day. I have to fight for getting the consumer to buy the products that we sell, because we are selling premium products and people do not understand it. So to be successful in India and to become a mainstream brand, you have to be extremely, price sensitive. The pricing that you give for India probably has to change, has to go lower, than the other countries. And consumers switch brands only if it is at a lower price point, giving the same quality. Um, 80% of the consumers are millennials. Vinod touched upon that, and that's the truth. So, they are the ones, who are going out, looking for new brands into the online space, going out on the market. And the new trend, which has started capturing attention, is that the big brands have started developing brands which are only present in the online space. They are not present elsewhere. So, and that's an easy tool. Why? Because if you look at the marketing channels, now we have about, Facebook and Instagram becomes the main social media channels. I will not touch upon the ATL and BTL activities because that is even relevant for the offline trade and also the, other brands. For the online first organic and natural brand, I think social media becomes the most important tool, followed by the influencer marketing, which is tying up into the bloggers and also, some of the celebrity endorsements, and also, going through the beauty channels that exist in the TV shows now. Some of the trade partners that we have dealt with, and we are referring to all these trade partners and the modern retail stores. And so we have Metro, Walmart, Reliance Market, Flamingo Retail, WH Smith. Some of you can, I think, relate to these brands. Reliance Fresh, Zomato, and then, we have the Big Basket, Spencer's. And then we also tie up with hotels and spas, to sell the products in their, many stores. Quickly touching upon the Cdisco, we do the Cdisco registration. We help the brands, whosoever we tie up with, in getting the Cdisco registration. I think our colleague Rucha will, probably delve more into it. But, we had been doing Cdisco, and, it's a whole different world of experience, getting the registration done for a brand. It can typically take about, 3 to 4 months or longer, depending on the whole scenario with the government. Quickly, we have been selling products online throughout the country, and delivering customers all over. And that's all about me. So, thank you for listening to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you,
All right.
Vaibhav. Yeah,
All right.
thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Vinod.
I think you have touched upon very uh, critical aspects of the trade. And I think I do wanted to get into more depth regarding some CDSCO matters, custom clearance. I mean, of course, payment terms, that is very relevant. So I think after Rucha's statement, if you can get some more information
Yeah.
regarding these CDSCO registrations, how much time, what are the fees and all, because that's the first step that our companies need to take. So I think that will be very relevant for us.
I think I'm happy to discuss about that, whenever you want me to go live again.
Grace, please take it forward. I didn't see you, that's why.
Yeah, no problem, Vinod. There are network issues at my end, so it's problem. It's a bit problem here. So, okay,
back.
now then moving forward, I would call Ms. Rucha Kerkar to share more upon the regulatory aspects of the business. Well, Ms. Rucha is the founder of Praha Regulatory Affairs Consulting, which provides end-to-end regulatory solutions to the cosmetic companies who are looking to foray into different foreign markets. Ms. Rucha also has an extensive experience of working in regulatory affairs, product development, and quality control in India and US. So over to you, Rucha.
Thank you very much, Grace, for this introduction. I would like to thank Enterprise Estonia. I would like to thank Ambassador Ma'am and Vinod for giving me this opportunity to talk, to address Estonian company on the regulatory aspect of exporting their products or importing the products into India. So it was very enlightening to hear Mr. Vinod and Mr. Vaibhav regarding the market trends and stuff like that. And before I could jump, I would like to share my screen. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes, Rucha, we can see that.
Okay. So basically, I attended a lot of webinars during this COVID pandemic, what during the pandemic and what after the pandemic is going to look like for, especially for the cosmetic brands or cosmetic market in India. And it was very interesting to know that the skincare segment or the care segment of cosmetics or personal care has boomed during this pandemic because people are staying more indoors, they are paying more attention to self-care, and they have, like, I usually wear a face mask and work. So I have gotten more time, or any person like me, or women or men equally get more time taking care of themselves during this pandemic. And people are they still have inhibitions to go out of their homes for work or for anything else, or even in the salons to get that very much needed self-care. So I think during this pandemic and also after the pandemic, for so I would say a couple years, people would be not willing to go out. So I think the care market would go up, and the makeup market, or the styling market would not see that much growth during this pandemic time, because this is considered a black swan, and it would be a difficult time for beauty market. But I think the companies who are looking into exporting cosmetics into India should consider skin care, hair care, or personal care, or body care cosmetics, those kind of cosmetics, more while exporting products into India during this pandemic time. And as rightly said by Weber, I think when he mentioned that the brands are more into go back to nature or something like that, we have seen a lot of trends like usage of natural products and usage of organic products, or products that contain more of natural or organic ingredients, or they also some products like free from the products containing some claims like free from parabens, free from sulfate, free from fragrance, which would give consumer an assurance that there are no ingredients in the product that would be a problem of any kind when they are using it. So I think that is a very interesting point. There are some brands that are coming up with missions like Bay York. I saw this brand on Instagram and it was very interesting. They have come up with a concept of Buy Stress initiative, which is, I think, very interesting, because people in today's world are stressed when it comes to even driving from work to home or home to work, or even promotions, changing their apartment, childbirth. There are a lot of stress involved, and one cannot know that they are stressed about something. So I think brands that are coming up with missions that are catering not just in the luxury market, but also targeting the audience in the form of some kind of a mission, like in this case, stress. So I think that is a very interesting concept, and I think companies who are looking into exporting products into Indian market should look into such kind of missions that they can address, because that is more, people find it, or consumers find it more relevant or more consumer specific. So I think that's a very good concept, and companies should definitely consider it. So going back to the same facts about what Vinod and Vaibhav spoke about, India is one of the top 5 cosmetic markets by revenue, and it is said to be the top personal care consuming nation in coming decades. And the reason for this change, I think, is because of this highly funded startups like Myntra, Flipkart, or some established D2C platforms like Amazon, and some early stage startups like Forest Essentials, Kama Ayurveda. These are the reason why I think the business regarding cosmetics is growing, or we have seen, or these basically are acting as a fuel to the entire cosmetic or personal care business landscape. Uh, so the market size is phenomenal, which is 20 billion, and which is 20 billion projected by 2025, which is, I think, phenomenal, with a CAGR rate of 17% or 16% on an average. And the Indian cosmetic market has a good standing of $6.5 billion from a global market of $275 billion. And it has a strong potential for cosmetic industry. There are a lot of reasons why some premium brands or international brands are making it big in the Indian market. And Revlon was the first international brand that was introduced into India and is doing pretty steadily and pretty good so far in India. Some companies like Dior, MAC, L'Oreal, Smashbox, The Body Shop, they made their entries in late 1900s. So I think Indian customer is getting more into, accepting those international brands, or thinking that international brands are better than Indian cosmetic brands. But I won't say that is the case, but still that's the mindset of the consumers. I would say international brands are succeeding in India, though Vaibhav mentioned that consumers are still pretty sensitive when it comes to pricing. And I totally agree to that, because I still have my family members or my friends or even myself. I usually compare the prices of two products, and I'm like, okay, this is a little cheaper than this other product, so I think I will go with the cheaper one. So I think what he said definitely makes sense. But consumers in India are very specific to product quality. And I lived in the US for almost 8 years, and I noticed that was different in the US than in India. In the US, people are more like, okay, let's try this. And in India, people go with more conventional, more quality specific products. So, but it's still a good market for international brands, because Indian consumers still give a lot of preference to the quality of the product. So that's the reason why the international brands like L'Oreal, MAC are still a big hit when it comes to skincare or color cosmetics in India. So product quality is the main focus here. I think growing disposable income of the working class is another reason. Economic empowerment, high spending, brand conscious consumers. They are, like Vinod mentioned, the consumers are still spending a lot of money, but at the same time, India is considered a nation which usually believes in spending. But I think this millennial trend, or in recent times, since the country is getting more westernized, I think they are spending, the spending capacity of the millennials or the youth is growing. So I think that's what, and obviously the consumers are becoming more brand conscious. Consumers are ready to experiment, unlike the older generations who are more into the traditional way or conventional way. I think the millennial today or the working class today is more about experimenting. But again, as I said, they are not ready to compromise on the quality of the product. So that's a good opportunity there. Make a good quality product, and you will definitely thrive here. People are traveling a lot more these days than they used to. I would say a decade or few decades before. So well-traveled, more exposed, and experienced youth, that is a good reason why the brands are succeeding here in India, the international brands specifically. And obviously, social media influencers, they are influencing our life every day, every minute. So they are definitely the big reason why international brands or even Indian brands are making it big in Indian market. In order to know, I know a lot of Estonian companies and Finnish companies are looking into exporting their natural products or organic products into, or regular cosmetic products into India. So it is very important that we know exactly what the definition of cosmetic is. So as per Section 3 AAA of Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940, Rule 1945, cosmetic means any article intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, or sprayed, or introduced into, or otherwise applied to the human body or any other part thereof by cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering the appearance, and including any article intended for use as a component of cosmetic is cosmetic. So anything, any product or any cosmetic product which you will be mentioning as cosmetic doesn't fit into this definition, then it won't be considered a cosmetic in India. So, and you would have to go through a lot of issues when you are registering your products into India. So anything that hints towards diagnosis, treatment, mitigation, or prevention of any disease it will not be considered as cosmetic. For example, in the US, products like acne, sunscreens, or screen protectant products are considered OTCs. And if you are, and even in Europe, though acne and sunscreen is not considered OTC, but the claims like prevention from skin cancer or prevention from skin burns or treatment of acne, blackheads, blemishes, or treatment of eczema, these kind of claims would be considered drug claims and wouldn't be considered cosmetic claims. So you have to pay a little attention to your claims, your labels, when you are trying to import your products into India. So this is very important that you say, you really pay attention to all your claims. Cosmetics in India are regulated by or governed by some agencies that is very important that we know. So we can refer to their websites to have more detailed information about how to do certain part of importing products into India. So for import of cosmetics is governed by Drug Controller General India, CDSCO, Directorate General of Health Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. The labeling of imported cosmetics should be according to the Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940, Rules 1945. But the good news is the stickering is allowed. So say if your product contains a label that is in any other language than English, then you are allowed to over-label your product with all the requirements as per Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940, Rules 1945, and legal metrology rules on the label. So that is a good thing. You don't have to discard all your bottles that are already labeled. So that's a good news here. And ingredient restrictions or standard for cosmetics in finished form are regulated by Bureau of Indian Standards. So you have to make sure that your products in finished form so basically the product that you are trying to export into India have the specifications that are compliant with the specifications or the standards of cosmetic as specified in Bureau of Indian Standards. And make sure that the ingredients or your ingredients do not contain any prohibited ingredients or are in compliance with the restriction of any ingredients according to the Bureau of Indian Standards. So importing cosmetics into India, what you need to know. Importing cosmetics into India is regulated under the provision of Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940 and Rules 1945. From the Gazette notification, GSR 426E, you can definitely refer to that on the CDSCO website. The import of cosmetic India needs to be regulated to ensure quality of cosmetics being imported. and the safety of the consumer, of course, because as usually perceived in other nations that the quality of products in India can be a tidbit here and there, but that's not the case with cosmetics here, or even drugs or Ayurvedic products. India is very particular when it comes to the regulation or the safety to the consumer and the quality of the product. So that is, you have to keep that in mind. You have to follow each and every regulation or each and every quality testing that is recommended or that is imposed by Indian regulatory authorities for cosmetics. So regulatory authority that governs the regulation of import of cosmetics is, as I said, Drug Controller General, CDSCO. The manufacturer who can import cosmetics into India, the manufacturer himself, who is having a registered office in India. The authorized agent, authorization is a person or entity in India authorized by the manufacturer. The authorized agent or the legal representative will be responsible for the business activities of the manufacturer in India, including compliance to the provision of Act in all respects, like the labeling compliance, the formula compliance, and all the other technical compliances. The subsidiary, an entity in India owned by the manufacturer, or any other importer, which means other than the manufacturer, other than the authorized agent or subsidiary. So how to import cosmetics? This would be a question by every company looking into exporting cosmetics into India, and this is a step-by-step guide on how to when you start thinking about exporting, to how to actually execute it. So you cannot export any cosmetics into India unless the product is registered and the manufacturing facility is registered under the rules by the licensing authority appointed by the central government under Rule 21, or by any person to whom such power may be delegated. So the very first step when we are thinking about exporting any particular cosmetic is to make sure that the formula is compliant with the Indian regulation as per the Bureau of Indian Standards, or as per the Food and Drug Act 1940, Rules 1945. You have to make sure that the ingredients are within acceptable limits. There are no ingredients that are prohibited to be used for step. And once you know that your formula is fully compliant, then you move on to the claims and label review. Like I said in my earlier slide, you have to make sure that all the labels or claims on your label are not hinting to drug or any medical or therapeutical activity of that product. Like I had given you the examples of acne or sunscreen. If you are exporting a sunscreen into India, sunscreen is not considered an OTC product in India, but it is a cosmetic product in India. So you cannot say that sunscreen can prevent, applying sunscreen can prevent sunburns or prevent skin cancer. So those are some claims to look for. You cannot use those claims on your label when you are thinking of exporting cosmetics into India. Label review, you have to make sure that your label is in accordance with the Bureau of Indian Standards or Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940, Rules 1945, and legal metrology. Legal metrology usually takes care of, how you have to do the MRP, you have to type the MRP on your label. That's something that legal metrology governs. Like I had said, who can help, who can basically import cosmetics into India? So you have to look for that kind of an agency who can act as your legal representative, file your dossier with CDSCO or apply on your behalf. So you have to look for that agency, or you can start up office or subsidiary in India to do that for you. The next step is dossier compilation. So when you are applying for an import registration of any product for exportation, you have to have a Form 42, which gives all the information about your product and your manufacturing facility and stuff like that. Additional to that, you need a certain kind of supporting documents, like some technical documents like specification, CFA, or non-animal testing documents, or manufacturing license, or you need some legal documentation like Form 42 or power of attorney, or you need some technical documents. So these are, or regulatory documents. So these are kind of documents that you need along with the form number 42 to apply for this import certification. And the import certification, once uploaded on the SUGAM, the fees are paid before compiling the documents. You get the receipt. So once you start uploading the documents, it is all digitalized. So you have to upload the document on a portal called SUGAM, which is the CDSCO government website. You have to upload all the documents along with the payment receipt. And once those is complete, and once those forms or all the supporting documents are reviewed by the licensing authority, you may be granted an import certification in the Form 43. This may take around 3 to 6 months, depending on how complete your form is or how packed the authorities are in terms of workload. So expect a good 3 to 6 months of receiving import certification. Things to remember when you are compiling documents or importing stuff into India, exporting stuff to India. All documents, labels, inserts should be in English language. If it is in any other language, then your product may be, your dossier or your documentation would have to be redone, and it consumes a lot of time. All documents required in the dossier, along with the Form 42 power of attorney, Schedule D3 should be complete and correct to avoid any delays in the application, to avoid application acceptance. According to the Drug and Magic Remedy, as Vaibhav mentioned, India is big on fairness market, but they are getting some backlashes from the media, government, everyone. So try to avoid the fairness because it has just started. We don't know how it's going to progress. If we can continue using the term fairness or anything even hinting towards fairness, we cannot use. So I think that's a wait and watch game. For CDSCO fees is based on per product category and not per product. So say you are importing any face care product which is not a face mask, then it is beneficial for you to include a lot of products that fit into a certain category rather than different products that are based on different categories. So I think exporting a lot of products under same categories would save a lot of money. And the fees for per category is $2,000. In case of any change in the product specification, ingredients, variants, or the registration certificate, the applicant will inform about those changes to the licensing authority by submitting revised Schedule D3 at least 30 days before the date of import. And also, if you are changing the manufacturer or the manufacturing site, then you have to reapply for the registration. If the applicant seeks to import the same brand belonging to different manufacturer, he needs to submit separate application for each manufacturer and has to pay separate fees. Please remember that the registration certificate is valid for 3 years from the date of issuance. Also, if you in one certificate, if you have applied, then if you want to re-register, if you want to register more products, then the under the same Form 42, then you have to make sure that you upload all the documents, and also the date of issuance for the first form and the date of expiration 3 years from that date would apply to any additional application for your new product. So this is very interesting. During this COVID phenomena, government came up with a notice, and I think that was pretty generous of them, which is people are facing a lot of problems getting the product notarized or apostille, because we do need certificate of resale or power of attorney or manufacturing license that forms a part of the dossier compilation that needs to be uploaded on CDSCO website as a part of application process. People were finding it difficult to get it notarized or apostille. So government has approved for self-attestation until this COVID pandemic vanishes, or for 4 months, whatever comes first. So I think that is very generous of the system, and we should make use of that new notice. So I think I have covered a very basic, or if I would say kind of a detailed, so that you know exactly what needs to be done, what not needs to be done, what needs to be taken care of while thinking about importing any product importing cosmetic product into India. So I have covered that. If you have any questions, you can contact me directly, or you can contact me through Enterprise Estonia, whichever you find is easier. So basically, I would like to just quickly give a finishing note with the services offered by Prahar Regulatory Consultants. We do formulation review, we do cosmetic claims and substantiation services. We do label review, dossier compilation, registration with CDSCO, Sugam portal membership, authorized agent services, and we also do cosmetic regulatory compliance for Europe, for Australia, for China, US, India. So if you have any questions regarding anything, you can contact me at my contact information here, rucha.kesar@praha.in, or you can call me on my US number, which is 551-208-1757, or my India number 96576-46700. You can also visit the website www.praha.in, and thank you. I hope this was informative, and feel free to ask any questions if you have.
Thank you, Rucha. We have one question from Mari. Vaibhav has already replied to it briefly, but if anyone, maybe Rucha or Vaibhav, would like to get into depth of it.
I would be happy if Rucha replies to that, because she has a more handle on this particular topic.
What's the question? I'm not able to.
It's in the chat.
Okay. No, I don't see any question here.
Let me just
Rucha, this is regarding the extract formulations, because the company doesn't want to disclose that how much information can be shared. And that's what the question is, that how much information can be shared if they are asking for extract formulations in the filling up of documents. How much information, because that's more a confidential manner, as Marie has mentioned. So what to do about that?
So unfortunately, when you are registering your product into India, registering product for import or export into India, you have to give the percent of each and every ingredient. So I think there's no other way that you can not disclose, because anyways, it's going to the government agency, and they are not going to use your formulation or your secret formulation in any other way. So I think it is pretty safe to give your formulation or your quantitative ingredient list, like we call it in our regulatory regulatory terminologies, QILs. You have to provide that, because without which you won't be able to get the approval on your application.
Thank you, Rucha. If anyone has any more question to ask, you can use the chat option on your screen.
Grace, quickly, I think Vinod wanted me to touch upon Sedesco. So if you want, I can take up that particular topic.
Okay, sure.
All right. So everyone, Sedesco is the big elephant, and dealing with the Indian government is not the easiest thing you would find. So Sedesco registration it's kind of like a long process, though due to the pandemic it has been reduced. The process timelines have been reduced. Earlier they were asking for you to physically send the documents, but I think you can now upload the documents, and you don't have to send the physical documents to the country. That's one easy thing. But even when this Sedesco registration is over, bringing in the first import of the product in the country is a very difficult process. Because the customs in India, has a very different viewpoints, and the person who is approving the import of goods into the country can have a very strange viewpoint about the import also. In the past, I have faced an issue with regards to the price of the product. And it was coming from, I think, Israel, and they wanted to see, the complete transparency on the pricing of the product. And even if the product is listed at a cost price of $1, they wanted to understand the breakup of $1, that why it is $1, because the same product was selling in the international market for about $15, and the custom officer wanted to consider $15 as the import price instead of $1. So you have to give devil its due. You do it and you move on. I had to do that, to be very honest to everybody. And another important thing about the India is that nowadays the regulation is getting more intense. As Rucha had mentioned, the legal metrology and the English labeling of the products, these have become very important. I am sure that India is not as intense as the European nation or the EU regulations. But having said that, the whole intensity of the compliance of the legal requirements has gone up. And if you're selling online or you're selling offline, the concerned government officials can visit that site, and they take a sample, and they can actually mark with their ruler whether the size of the digit is the same as it has been prescribed in their newsletters and their gazettes. So all this has become very important nowadays. And another quick point about the the import duties, we are looking at about 43 to 44% import duty on any product which is falling under the hair care, skincare, or body care category, which is very high. We are almost saying that a thing which is for $1 in Estonia is going to $1.50 in India, and we have not input the shipping cost and the insurance cost, or the cost of the exchange values. So which is the reason that not everybody gets into the import business. And I know that some of the one of the viewer wanted to discuss about this particular topic. So India is huge market. Why? Because there are so many Indian brands that claim themselves to be organic or natural, or saying certain approval and things like that. But until unless you have the certification to substantiate your claim of organic or natural, nobody would believe. So even if there are brands in India which are available for cheaper price, say for example 500 rupees, and if I'm bringing a product which is 1500 rupees, I know that I have to fight that brand in the marketplace by clearly saying that these are the certifications that I have, and let the consumer decide whether they want to buy a non-certified product which claims to be organic or natural, or a one which is actual certified product. So I think Estonian companies should look at India with a more bold strategy. The only thing that they have to be concerned about is the pricing, and by that I mean the end pricing. And if possible, Vinod and Grace, I would request Madam Ambassador, if they can discuss with the Indian government in the reduction of duties, for certain bilateral trade agreement, that could probably encourage participation from the Estonian companies to India, if that's possible. So just wanted to share that.
I would also like to add a few words here if we still have time, a little bit time, and if you don't mind. Like Vaibhav just mentioned, India regulation in India is a little more or less stringent than those in Europe. But I have worked extensively for European customers or for US-based customers or India-based customers that are looking into exporting their products into EU. And I would say regulations in the EU are comparable to regulations in India. So they are pretty, even Indian regulations are pretty straightforward, but at the same time pretty stringent. And I would say they are comparable to those in the EU. And also would like to add that India is coming up with a proposed cosmetic rules 2018, which may have a little more ruling or a particular ruling when it comes to cosmetic products. And they are also looking into safety assessments. I don't know if it would be as particular or as strict as in EU, but let's wait and see how it goes regarding the safety assessment. Or rather, you have to prove that your product is safe in order to bring it into the Indian market. So that is one thing. And I think I have been asked another question about the length of specification, but I think the specification here is a little misunderstood, but the specifications are for the product. Like if you are importing, if you are exporting any lipstick into India, then I think the product or the percent of heavy metals or the payoff or the melting point, those kind of specifications I was talking about more when it comes to talking about the specifications in particular. And the product description and not the product description, but the specification, I think are supposed to be, you are supposed to get it notarized. Any legal documents, any regulatory documents, or any technical documents, those are, that are relevant needs to be notarized. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, Rucha and Vaibhav. If we have any more questions, you can mention it in the chat box. Okay, if not, then I would like to conclude.
Actually, I may have a question. I have a question for Vaibhav.
Yes, please.
If you don't mind.
Yes,
If
please,
you
go
don't
ahead.
mind. So my question is, when it so you are running an e-commerce website. A
Yes.
little bit I know how the e-commerce website runs because my husband is totally an e-commerce guy. So I want to know, like, when you do, like, when any consumer is looking for any particular product on your website, I know you guys do keyword marketing and stuff like that. So basically, do they look for any particular words like no parabens or paraben free or sulfate free or any free from claim or any organic, natural, or any, how do they look for products? Do they go for brand names, or do they go for product identification, or do they look for any free from claim or any trending word that we usually call in our cosmetic business?
Sure. I think that's a great question. So what happens is, we have done extensive research on this particular topic, and now we have, different AdWords platform or the marketing platform. So Google is one, Google AdWords, which is capturing the whole Google search space in India or elsewhere. Then we had been doing, AdWords campaign or the, marketing campaign within Amazon, and Amazon also, captures each search that you do on Amazon. It has come to our attention is, that there are certain words, which become popular based on the trend. For example, hair serum is one, or the face serum is one, which was not searched about 3 to 4 years ago. but now, it has started getting a lot of search attention. And when you are marketing on any of these platforms, whether it is Google or it is Amazon, you can see that how many times a particular word has been searched. So Google gives you trends for India searches. Once you start, set up your own campaign for marketing, it gives you that tool, which is called keyword planning tool. And it allows you to search for the keywords which had been, heavily searched in India. So for example, hair serum is something, which gets searched a lot, but, sulfate free may not be the one, which India uses. India consumers behave in a different way. How they understand the product, how they understand certification is very different than how it is done for, other countries. So even SLS free, is something may not get used. And it depends on the, brands, and also on the marketing companies, on, what kind of words they are using for the communication, or for the branding or the marketing of their products. For example, we recently started with argan oil based shampoos from Israel. Now, argan oil is a very popular search word now. It was not the same for 3 or 4 years ago. So every year or every 6 months, I think we keep seeing the new terms and, new search terms, entering the Indian market space, and you start capturing on those. At the same time, I want to do share, that if there is a brand, which is there in Estonia and has a, really a different, product take on the existing products, and has a very different formulation, then I would advise them to, first of all, bring in those products which are already popular in India, and get the brand out, and then add those brand or those products, which are, kind of more outliers, or, which are, really useful and really helpful for the consumers. But, the words that are being used in that product name is not so popular, because you will not get the search list in that case.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome to you. And yeah,
We have
Grace and
another
Vinod,
question for Vaibhav.
Yes. How about the payment terms? Okay, so are you referring to payment terms between the importer and the exporter, or the payment terms between the retailer and the importer?
Well, that's the first question. My exporting company is going to ask me that, Vinod, my money is stuck. How much time will it take to get it back? So what is the general market trend? I mean, on the payment, that's what I know, the basic 45 days, but what's the reality? You are on ground.
So what happens is, Vinod, it is between the negotiation between the importer and the exporter. Some of the companies are very clear, that they want upfront money, 100% advance. Although the advance can come at a different stage, because some of the brands that we deal with do not have the finished product. So we have to place in an order for a product, then they, produce it for us, and then they dispatch it. So each of the stage between that, has a different payment term attached to it. Some of the companies, keep the products ready in stock. So for them, the payment terms could be different. So it all depends, between the negotiation. And I don't know, you mentioned there are 1100 importers in the country, which is quite a large number. And out of those 1100, I don't know how many are doing ethical and a clear business terms. I don't know that. We are definitely very clear, at the end of the day, even if you don't money, we will not suck anybody's money here. One caution advice to all the Estonian companies who are participating: be very clear with, the terms between the Indian importer, because they may show you the moon, but they may not even deliver you a tree. So just be very careful with them. I have numerous times, I have seen companies, who started interaction with me, went to some other importer or some other person, and they never could formalize the business. So, one has to be really careful. No desperation of coming to India. Be very, I think be very slow, but go very deep into the Indian market and understand, whether the consumer is looking for that product or not. That marketing research has to be done.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cool, Vinod.
So any more questions coming up? We'll wait for a few more minutes and then we can conclude.
I think one thing I probably wanted to touch upon, Grace, about the registration process. It's a regular question that I get asked by a lot of the exporters or the companies. the registration fees of $2,000 per category gets misunderstood a lot of times. When we say $2,000 per category, so for example, India has harmonized system codes, as Vinod mentioned, HSN codes. Now, under an HSN code, they have various classifications. So if you have a product, say if you have a face care as a category, you have a moisturizer, you have a serum, you have a cleanser, you have a toner. So all these 4 products may or may not fall under the same category. But if you have a face moisturizer and you have 20 different flavors of that face moisturizer, you don't pay for each variation. You only pay $2,000 for those 20 moisturizer. Whereas if you have say 2 serums under your category, in your face care category, but the Indian CDSCO considers that serum is a different category than a face moisturizer, then you end up paying $2,000 for just 2 products. So this variation is very much dependent on how the HSN code is built into the Indian classification of the beauty products. And if the product is made in the same factory under the same category, say for example, I mentioned about face moisturizer, even if you have 20 products and you have say 10 different brands coming from the same factory under the same registration, you only pay $2,000 for that 20 products for single brand and additional brands which are also falling under the face moisturizer. So this way you save a lot of money, and it depends on the strategy that you have for India, because the registration is valid for 5 years. So even if you want to start with one brand now and then maybe 2 years later you want to add another brand, it's better to have the registration done now, until as the rule changes in the future, that could mean a large number of issues in getting the registration done in India. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Vaibhav. So I think we have already crossed the time limit. So I would quickly like to conclude, and I would firstly like to thank all of you, Vaibhav, Rucha, and Vinod, for sharing your experience and expertise on the Indian beauty market. And quickly, I would like to tell our companies about the upcoming plans of AIS. So we plan to host a B2B matchmaking event by end of this month, July. So we will be sending out some feedback questionnaires, and we would expect you to fill that back and send to us, and let us know your expectations, your partner preferences as to what you are looking in India, and then we can support you to meet and collaborate with the most relevant partners from India. Apart from that, we have had some delegation visits prepared for this year, but unfortunately, because of the current crisis scenario, I don't think that this year would be possible. So most probably, I think by beginning of 2021, we hope to bring some delegation visit to India. And there are also some exhibition which you would like to take note of. We have Beauty and Spa Expo in India, which is held every year in New Delhi in the month of May. But again, it's very uncertain because all the expos and exhibitions are being held virtually. So we are yet to see that. And also would like to add regarding our team and our Estonia Asia Trade Agency. Currently, we are having service experts from China, Japan, India, and Singapore. And we hope to add a few more countries, hopefully by next year. So if you have any plans, or if you are looking forward to explore other Asian markets, then please feel free to contact us, visit our website. And okay, yeah. So that's it from my side. And if you have any questions, please let us know. I think you all have my email, like most of the companies who are present in this webinar. So you can reach me, or you can reach our guests. So thank you everyone for taking part in this webinar.
All right. Thank you, Grace, and Ita to everybody in Estonia.